Welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 168. I am Aaron, and with me as always is Dave and Fredo. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
We are, well, today, we now have a new Saints team, so we won't talk about that, but there's some big shakeups in the special teams department today. That was kind of interesting. So now we just have to wait, 2 weeks before we see what this Saints team can do. So, hooray.
And as somebody pointed out online, it's like always remember that the 53-man roster you see today may not be the 53-man roster you
Yeah,
see
right?
come that first Sunday because as people get cut, released, traded, you know, opportunities open and changes are made up until the last minute.
I have a feeling that it's kind of like the line from that thing you do, keep your eye on your money. It's like, because you're going to be a nomad. Anyway, so yeah, can't wait. And um, college football is starting, so I get to see how much my Cornhuskers are going to make me sad. So it could
Don't
go
look at the
one way
news
or the
today.
other. So anyway, um, and Dave is a K-State, Florida State fan, and I'm a Nebraska fan, and we still get along. So those of you in Washington, yes, dogs and cats can play together and be just fine. So, Fredo, do you have a
I,
college team?
I don't really, because I went to a small college in Memphis and I went to a small college for my master's degree in New Orleans. And I do work for Tulane, but that feels kind of weird jumping on that bandwagon. So I'm
Oh,
like,
I'd
my
jump.
answer,
I'd jump
my
all over
answer is,
that bandwagon.
yeah, no, my answer is always I root for the chaos. I root for by week 5, there being like 5 of the top 10 teams having lost, and there being everybody's, top 20 just ripped to shreds because that's when it gets fun.
Yeah, kind of like a big NCAA, March Madness bracket. Anyway, well,
Exactly.
yeah. So, and that also means that the temperatures are going to start coming down at some point. So, hooray! But even more exciting, we had new Star Wars last week, and we have even more new Star Wars in 20 minutes here on this Tuesday night because the third episode of Ahsoka is going to be dropping. So, guess what, kids? We're going to be talking about Ahsoka, episodes 1 and 2, and just kind of in general. Yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So, before that, let's do some trivia though. Get our brains wrapped around some Star Wars stuff. All right. So, to Dave. What rebel was originally slated to be a green skinned alien with huge gills? What
That was,
rebel was originally slated to be a green skinned alien with huge gills?
yeah, that was Han Solo.
I'm glad they chose wisely. Yes, that was to be Han Solo. Can you imagine that? Let's all
Mm,
close our eyes and imagine Han Solo looking like Swamp Thing. And is it the same movie?
What if it was Greedo? Like he looked like
Well,
Greedo,
could he
and
be
and
could he be Merman and talk like Merman? You know that
Yeah,
would that would
it's such a different, it's such a different vibe. I mean, would Chewbacca then have been a human co-pilot, or would he have still been the lovable
well.
big
Remember
dog that he is?
remember Chewbacca looked like what Zeb looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all been weird. All right, well, one down. Good job, Dave. So Fredo, to you, who calls R2D2 a malfunctioning little twerp and a stupid lump? Who calls R2D2 a malfunctioning little twerp and a stupid lump?
I would venture a guess and says C-3PO.
It is C3PO. Man, that's kind of
That was a layup.
it's kind of let's not have bullying, kids. All right, and to me, what diplomat rescued by Qui-Gon Jinn snipes that the Jedi's negotiations seem to have failed? What diplomat rescued by Qui-Gon Jinn Snipes that the Jedi's negotiations seem to have failed. Um, rescued. That's weird. Rescued by Qui Gon Jinn seem to have failed. Um, that's not Newt Gunray, is it? No, C.O. Bibble. Grr. Ugh.
Yeah, the old guy with the beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Old C.O.
exactly.
Bibble.
Yeah,
That's right.
put me on the spot. I never would have guessed his name.
Ah, man. All right. Well, you guys win the tournament tonight. So, all right. Well, we got a couple bits of news before we get into Ahsoka. So, Fredo, what's going on in Star Wars land?
Uh, So just I'll start with the one that came out today. So today was the release of From a Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi, which I don't think Brittany Williams wrote for this one. She's basically writing her own novels right now and promoting them. But yeah, today you get the 40th anniversary, much in the same way as we got with New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. From a Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi. So it's out there for everybody to grab and purchase and read and enjoy.
Have you guys seen the Shakespeare adaptations of the novelizations?
I have. I actually bought the Odyssey of Star Wars, which actually turns A New Hope into a Homeric poem, which is actually quite a neat thing
We
to
might
do.
might have to do dramatic readings with Aaron at some segment. Just take a scene from A New Hope and in the voice of Shakespeare. It's kind of like I don't know if you ever. There's a YouTube clip out there of the guy who did Winnie the Pooh's voice, and he like was he read all the Darth Vader lines um,
Mhm.
Yeah.
from the opening of A New Hope. It was awesome. So look that one up.
Yeah, no, it's fun. The other bit of news, and this is upcoming, but we officially got announcement that Mandalorian season 1 and 2 are coming for physical media. So December 12th, 2023, you're able to buy Blu-rays of the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian, which I believe would make them the first Disney Plus shows to be available to own on a medium, on a physical medium,
You
which
know,
is kind of a big deal.
my gut reaction was one, and then immediately followed with a totally different reaction, and I'm gonna have to go buy that because it's like what happens when Disney Plus goes belly up, and suddenly I can't watch The Mandalorian anymore. Even if I want to, like on a sick day or just a veg out day. Okay, way to take my money some more there, Disney.
No, because you make a point because I was reading an article in The Guardian today, which was discussing the very reality of shows coming off streaming services. I mean, they're putting it in the framework of the current writers and actors strike against the studios for the residuals payments that they're not getting from streaming services. But there's this concept that the idea of the streaming service at one point was that it didn't matter that you didn't purchase the Blu-ray, the DVD, the whatever. You would have it. You could always click on an app and get access to it. But slowly but surely, in the last year, a lot of shows, Willow from Disney Plus is no longer there. If you like Westworld on HBO, that's no longer there. It's a whole bunch of shows that were made, promoted, that people liked, and unless you had the physical media available on your shelf, you can't find anymore.
Yeah. No, y'all make a good point. Honestly, it's I I guess I'm not worried per se. I don't think it's the kind of thing that will
You don't think they're showing
like
their cards?
well, like the closest thing to a real world example I can think of for this situation is the Clone Wars micro series, which became not canon at some point, and they stopped making those DVDs, and then nobody could watch them anymore. And the DVDs were like, you could find them on Amazon for $100 or whatever, but like that was it. And then they eventually added it to Disney Plus. So I think I guess my takeaway from that whole situation is just that this stuff is always really fluid. Um, it's not going to be something that will disappear forever. It's also not going to be something that may not be readily available. Mandalorian, if Disney Plus fails, Mandalorian could be unavailable for a number of years,
Hmm.
a decade, 2 decades. It'll come back eventually. Um, it'll be available eventually. Um, but if you don't like playing those odds, and it sounds like Aaron is like, no, I don't want to play. I don't want to play
Well,
those odds. I want to make sure I can have it and watch it when I want to.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. But however, the ironic thing is, I can't remember the last time I turned on my Blu-ray. As a matter of fact, I got my Nintendo Switch at the beginning of the pandemic, and I had to unplug the Blu-ray from its HDMI port because I didn't have enough HDMI ports. So the Switch has been plugged in ever since. So that tells you at least how long it has been since I've plugged in my Blu-ray. But yeah, I don't know, But then I don't know. Like
And
I
that's
said that,
good. That's
but like I said, my instant reaction I was wondering is like, is this a signal of things to come? It's like, but then it's like, okay, well maybe they're seeing subscriptions drop because of prices going up and people just not wanting it anymore, but they know that there's Star Wars fans out there that would want to watch The Mandalorian. So it doesn't cost a lot to produce a Blu-ray probably in the grand scheme of things. So um, now here's the kicker: is will they have like a special behind the scenes featurette that's not on Disney Plus? Because then it's going to be, yeah, take my money because I'm a sucker for those. So
I don't know if they've announced yet any extras. I mean, I imagine that some of the behind the scenes stuff, a lot of the videos that are already available on Disney Plus, because that's just it's easy to take from that, put it in there, and hey, there you go. And if they include a few more things, all to the good. But yeah, it's always look. The reality is, it's always going to be a concern because, like I said, I watched all three, 4 seasons of Westworld, and now can't watch it
I wonder.
unless so there's always that concern that whenever the media strategy of the head echelon of the studio says, "Oh, we're going to do this," and there may go the show that you really really love. So,
Wonder why not season three? It's not like it.
because it's the most recent.
Yeah, but it's not like it. I mean, it's not like it just got done. I mean, you go and see a movie in the theater, and what, like 2 months later, it's on a streaming service or on DVD. So
I wonder if
DVD,
these two
the
are test
'90s
run.
called, and they want their technology back. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say that maybe this is a test run. They want to see how much of a how many people run out there and get these. Because you're right. I mean, they could have put these 2 seasons, actually all 3 seasons of Mandalorian, could have put Andor, could have put Book of Boba Fett, and they're picking the first 2 seasons of the show that's been a hit since day one. They want to see what reaction they get.
What's the last TV series that you guys purchased in physical form? Because it wasn't something that I regularly engaged in. We mostly bought movies, right? Um,
Mhm.
but
Uh, I bought a few. I bought a few. Now, like I bought like Band of Brothers and John Adams, which are miniseries.
Yeah,
mhm.
But actual scripted series, Game of Thrones, which I was getting the Blu-rays, because
I'd say I
for all the extras, because all the extras were cool in those Blu-rays.
I
And
have a
then
pile of South Park seasons, and then just kind
mhm.
of stopped on that one. I will say my favorite though is the bootleg WKRP series that my brother got us all for Christmas one time. Um, that is my favorite. So
That's pretty good. Yeah. I, I was thinking the first season of True Detective was maybe the last one that I could think of that we got,
now
and that plays like a movie. I mean, that's a really good season of television.
when was the last time you guys used your Blu-ray player? Just out of curiosity. I mean, Dave, you got kids, so probably more recent, but I bet you also have streaming services. So
Yeah, I think it was a few weeks back. was a random kids movie that we didn't know where to find, and we knew we owned it, so we rummaged and pulled it out.
For me, I would say 2 years ago. And I know that because that's when after Hurricane Ida hit, happy anniversary, by the way, because we didn't have, Dish Network couldn't get out to our home to reconnect the service for a month. So we had to bust out the Blu-ray and the DVD player to go through all the other stuff because that's the thing. You didn't have, I mean, you had the over-the-air antenna, but if you're not interested in watching, America's Got Talent or The Voice, okay, time to rewatch all the old stuff.
There we go. All right. Well,
So one last bit of news that'll take us into Ahsoka, Aaron, because today I was still talking about this. Disney Plus did announce via press release that Ahsoka drew 14 million views for its premiere last week. So they're obviously touting that as good news. They're so happy with it. They're excited for the reaction from the fan base for the show. Now, I was telling you, apparently there was a service called Samba TV that measures streams and whatnot, and they reported that that number was a 25% decline in viewership from season three of Mandalorian just a few months back. Now, apples and oranges and all that other stuff, but it's interesting because I'm sure they're keeping Disney's keeping a close eye on how much they're getting a return on these Star Wars shows.
what we were talking before, Dave, before you got on, and I really think that's a little bit of apples and oranges because, you know, um, season three of The Mandalorian, there's a whole lot of people who are invested in Din and Grogu, and then you have something brand new. It's like, you know, um, it's so it would be more interesting to me to see how it compared to like season one premiere. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, Mandalorian was established, so but
Yeah, it'd be
whatever.
interesting. Would be compared to Andor because they're more secondary characters from previous or characters from previous properties that didn't necessarily have the built-in audience that Mandalorian already had.
Yeah.
See how they would compare.
Yeah, Boba Fett for that matter too. Um, I would love to know how it compares to those properties. But yeah, I I think a lot of people were talking about it. I think it was popular. It's uh, it's off to a fast start, I think.
Well, let's dive into it right there because the first bullet point I have. So we had two episodes of Ahsoka. It's called. First episode was Master and Apprentice, and the second episode was Toil and Trouble. So just your overall reaction to, like I said, I don't have to get into specifics. Just, how fired up were you or not fired up were you? What's just your gut reactions from the first watch? So, Dave, I'll start with you.
Dollar signs. That was my first reaction, that they put a lot of care and budget into this show. And again, I appreciate that because that's a better way to achieve your vision when you've got financial backing behind what you're trying to do. So, um, as a fan of Star Wars, I did appreciate seeing that, and it extended throughout. I mean, like obviously the cast is not a bunch of no names. They spared no expense on the visual effects, um, the sound. I think like that might have been one of the first things that just jumped out at me. It was just like the scoring and how classically Star Wars it sounded, and just how much investment there must have been in that. Because it wasn't just that it was evocative of classical Star Wars, but that it was good as well. I mean, it was actually good. And so like those were the sorts of things that jumped out at me. It's just like there was there was a lot of quality. The bar is high at this point. I guess I'll say that after the first two episodes, like the bar is very, very high, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Fredo.
Yeah, I think just initial thoughts were really, it felt like confident directing, and you can tell how much Dave Filoni has grown as a director.
He's not
Because
directing it.
well, he directed first episode.
I thought what I thought somebody else. He wrote them, but I thought that it
He
was
wrote,
directed by
he's,
somebody else.
no, he directed episodes one and is going to direct episode five.
Yeah, he directed episode one.
Okay.
Episode two was directed by Steph Green.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm. So, but that's kind of my point is that he's gotten so much better from uh Clone Wars, Rebels, Mandalorian, like the opening felt like classic Star Wars. Like that combination of Western with Eastern sensibilities, from the opening scene, that was fun. Then the scene with Ahsoka in the temple, that felt like straight, like they were mixing Star Wars with Indiana Jones. So I love it when they do that. I love when they throw in other genres underneath the Star Wars just to kind of mix it up.
Yeah, it was like
And,
Indiana
and
Jones and Fifth Element and Star Wars all got in a sandbox and played. Yeah.
basically, and I like that. I like it when they're because that tells me they're confident in the story they're going to tell. They're not afraid of kind of pushing some things. Overall, the first two episodes, they were great, shot well, acted tremendously well. The fight scenes, choreography was tremendous. The music was just impeccable. I think they've done a great job, and uh, and the other thing I'll say just right off the bat, it felt different from Mandalorian. It felt different from Andor. And that's always one of those things that I'm beginning to look for in these different properties, because I don't want it to all feel kind of like not to disparage them, but like if you ever saw the CW Flash Arrowverse shows, when they were doing Green Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, they all felt that same. We're all making this in a backlotting Vancouver kind of vibe. This doesn't feel like this. Actually feels like they're actually putting the care and effort into making these shows feel and sound and look like they're in Star Wars but different.
Yeah, and I was over the moon. Um, and it's like I watched both episodes, and then the next day I started watching them again, and then Britt and I got to watch them together after that. So I mean, it's the rewatchability is there. I dug it that much. Dave, all the things you said, and that's our next bullet point we'll talk about. This thing, and I've liked all the other episodes, or all the other series. And by God, we just had one a couple months ago where Darth friggin' Vader was, in half of it. And this felt like Star Wars. It felt so much like you said, from the way that it opened up. We had a crawl, a kind of a crawl. We had the pan down to the ship. We had lightsabers, we had blaster fire, we had talk of empire. I mean, but it did not feel like a rehash. So it was, I mean, and it was even though, and a lot of people criticize these two episodes for being slow, and I didn't think that at all. I thought it paced well. Like I said, just the rewatchability. That was my first. I was like, I can't wait to watch it again. Um, so I want to jump into the aesthetics part of it. Like I said, Dave started talking about it. The music is, I think, the best music that we've had in any of these series. And I mean, it's not like we're playing fair, because it's Kevin Kiner, the dude who did like Rebels and Clone Wars for Dave Filoni. So he's already 75% there. But we had themes for people, because there was Hera had a theme, and Sabine had a theme, and Ahsoka has a theme, and so there were those clips that came back that you may not be as singable as like Darth Vader's theme, or the Force theme, but you recognize them if you watched Rebels, or the Clone Wars. So yeah, the music was just great, and there were times where there was no music, And then when the music came in, it was like, so it was just, you're right. It was well put together. And I agree with you 100%, Dave. The, and then I'll let you guys talk about this. My criticism of the other series, and you've heard it on this podcast before, is that, okay, you can tell where they ran out of their allowance.
Yeah.
Or it was like, oh crud, we got 2 days to get this scene put together. Or the volume, it's like it was obvious that they were in the volume or these things. And I didn't really get a whiff of that in this. It was the most cinematic looking bit of Star Wars that we've gotten.
The opening shot, and I'm glad you brought that up too, with the semi crawl, the pan down to the ship and then boom, we're off, we're running. So similar to so many of the movies that we've seen so far. But just that I'm guessing it was a model, and I'm going to be interested to learn more about like what went into the making of this. But that model of that ship, it was like
so good.
chef's kit. Yeah, no, it looked perfect. It looked spot on. Like some of the stuff you see in some of the animated shows and even in Mandalorian, when they're flying through space and they're getting into dogfights and things like of that nature, it looks fine. It gets the job done, but it just doesn't look as good as that stuff that we saw on the big screen so many years ago. And so just for him to get that right out of the gate, like, all right, we're in, I'm in now. And the cues and the music, you're talking about like the French horn, like you hear this like front and center French horn like early on in this show, and I'm like, okay, like I loved what we got in Mandalorian and some of the other series, but like I'm transported. It's like I'm in Star Wars, like you said. Like again, like is something Star Warsy enough? Well, there should really be no debate about that here, at least in terms of the ambiance and the design, the overall design of the series.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that really got to me in just these first episodes. I mean, we'd spent a good bit of time in Lothal. We spent a good bit of time with the villains and everybody, but it's how much the story sips one place to the next. Like characters are having discussions in hangars, they're having discussions, as they're coming and going. This is a story that's moving. I'm surprised that people said these first two episodes were slow because I always thought that was the criticism for the first two episodes of Andor, if you recall,
Mm-hmm.
that things didn't pick up till episode 3, which is when all the action happens. But that was by design. I don't think that these were slow. If anything, I think from the moment they started, we're gonna hook you in. And they hook us in with the villains, they hook us in with the mystery. They're trying to build this sense of there's a lot of stuff happening and you need to figure out why. And as the mysteries kind of unfold, then our characters are being introduced or reintroduced.
Well, and I'm going to probably surprise you both, but this leads into the next thing. Let's talk about the character portrayals. The music that they used when they introduced Sabine, the like Asian punk band.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Perfect.
that worked.
That's her. That's her.
Yes, it was her. It was. I mean, it worked. You can't. That I was like my first reaction. I was like, well, that's different. But then I was like, this is cool. All right, yeah, this works. And I don't know. Maybe the weird stuff that we heard in Mandalorian and and others, maybe that helped kind of carry me to that point where I can accept something totally new. But it was rock music, but it didn't sound like Jedi rocks. I mean, it was good.
It's not George Lucas's awful idea of what rock music is supposed to sound like, right?
It reminded me a lot of when Jedi Fallen Order hired the Mongolian rock band the Who to give him a song for the part of the game where Cal Kestis is fighting in the arena. Of course, you're gonna give you something that feels like it's part of Star Wars, but it's not. While at the same time, like it feels part of the world. And more than anything, I think the big key was that they hit the essence of Sabine. She's a graffiti artist. She's colors her hair different colors.
She's a
She's
rebel. She
a
is a
rebel in
rebel.
every way.
Yeah. Um, so okay, so yeah, let's talk about, because there were some surprises in here. First of all, I want to say, like I said, we have I have um, my family litmus tests. I haven't talked to my in-laws yet, but Brittany hasn't watched really any of Rebels. She hears us talk about Rebels, but I asked her. I said, "Did you feel lost at all?" She's like, "No." I mean, they did a good job in these two episodes of just kind of saying who people were, what the dynamics are, and where we are, and then but okay, so I was excited when he introduced Jai Kell. Senator Jai Kell. I was like, oh wow, he's here. That's cool. And I was like, well, and Ryder Azadi is the
Right.
governor, and it's the
Yeah.
same dude
Which
who voiced him. And I was like, well, that's cool. So there's that, again, that element of the people who watched Rebels are like, yes, and the people who didn't are like, okay, cool. I understand who these people are. Um, so, but let's talk about let's talk about the biggies first of all. And I want to talk about, we were just talking about Sabine, and I will say Bull's friggin' eye.
Yeah.
And
MVP.
I was the one, you go back into these past episodes, and I was like, why can't they just get, Tia Sircar, and, or Sircar, and because that voice was so important, but holy cow, did she just nail it.
My favorite character in the series so far. I mean, like the antagonists, I love. I love all of them, um, but like they don't get as much screen time, so it's more of a they do as much as they can with a tiny little amount of work. Sabine's front and center. She's got probably as much screen time as anybody so far. Maybe slightly more than Ahsoka or slightly less. I don't know. It's probably neck and neck between those two, but critically important role for the series, crushing it. Love her, amazing. No, no moments of like, well, that was an interesting acting choice where you sit there and you start to evaluate the performance. No, I just was like, I just rolled with it and
She
just
was
bought her.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
it was her standoffishness, her kind of her childishness, her confidence, the facial expressions of, the smirks that she would put on. Yeah, I don't know, Fredo, I assume
yeah,
you're in
no,
the same boat as
yeah,
us.
very much so. I love the fact that after the show, the first two episodes, everybody went back and found that clip from Rebels when Kanan's talking to Hera about training Sabine and talking about how her connection to the Force is somewhat blocked and how she's so talented but so difficult. And ultimately, it's like she's so Mandalorian. And you're like, well, yeah, that's who she is. She's
You know,
somebody who's very much a brilliant character, is very talented, but she's also very much product of her family and everything around her. So she's very, she's different than everybody else in certain ways. And I think that kudos to Natasha Lee Bordisa because she captured that essence really well, while also showing us that no, this is a character who's still kind of grown up. This is still the same Sabine that we knew from Rebels, but just a few years down the line.
and we don't have to talk a lot about Ahsoka because we've talked about how Rosario has portrayed her. I know that my instant reaction to you guys was, it seemed like she was just kind of grumpy the whole time. Um, but then, because I guess I was kind of flashing back to, the earlier episodes of the Clone Wars where Ahsoka was not beaten down by life. She was, energetic, she was cocky, she was everything. And then latter, well, especially the last season of the Clone Wars, she's very somber, very serious. Um, but it was just so I do think Rosario is doing an awesome job with Ahsoka. I did like seeing how she did start grumpy, but then there was that kind of lightening up a little bit at the end when she called Sabine Padawan, you know. Um, but I love, we don't know why it's there, but the confrontation between and the uneasiness between the two of them. They
I
they did
believe that.
such a natural, great job of, you know, getting that across that wow, okay, this is really uncomfortable.
That's the
Yeah, you
great
let
thing about her right now is the promise of more. And that character has been kind of blank slatey for probably too long, in my opinion. Um, and now they're promising like we're going to peel back some layers of the onion here, and we're going to get at what makes her tick, and like what's going on between the two of them, and that's going to be a major piece of that. And I also just briefly want to say that I think her body language has improved. I feel
Well,
like she's been watching the cartoons and like
the
taking cues from them
the
and is
resistance
now incorporating
broadcast
them.
the resistance broadcast said there's got to be a drinking game that every time Ahsoka crosses her arms, you got to take a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's such an integral part of like that design of that character from the get-go.
But
Um
what's also interesting because the thing that I picked up on, first of all, yes, you're led to believe that there's been a relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine. Maybe did not end on the best terms. We know from Rebels that Sabine had some issues with wielding the dark saber when Kanan tried to teach her.
And they
We
had
know that
zero
Ahsoka
inter. They really had zero interaction in Rebels.
in Rebels, right? Ahsoka was in and out as Fulcrum for a while there. The thing that I'm loving about Rosario is a lot of that crossing of the arms and her just standing back. This is her in some ways behaving like Anakin did when he was her master. You're seeing that flipping of her. She's now become the master. So therefore, she's trying to behave like her master would with her apprentice. That's why I'm loving the relationship between the two of them because if you remember when Ahsoka was the Padawan, when she was Snips, she was talk first, think first, like action, let's go, and in a weird way, she was as impetuous, if not more so, than Anakin. And now maybe the years have taught her to be more patient, to be more guarded, to be more aware of what her actions are, which obviously having fought through all the fights she's had makes sense. But it's that dynamic. Now she's faced with a younger version of herself in Sabine. And there's that struggle that much in the same way as Anakin had with her, that she's got to temper her own self in order to be able to teach this Padawan in front of her.
Now, we only saw a hologram of him, but Ezra, and for only a couple seconds. But Ezra, again, just from that little snippet, voice nailed, body language nailed. It seems like that's going to be, now wait until we get more of him, but that seemed to work. Hu Yang was awesome. I love how he is just the um, yeah, the no filter. You know,
the conscience.
yeah. I mean, just the no filter. I loved it. Except for that he blinks. And then I went looked at a Clone Wars episode and he blinked in the Clone Wars too. And it's like, why does a droid need to blink? But whatever. I got over that. Not really, but
Padawans.
um, but it is interesting. For those of you who don't know who that character is, he's probably the oldest Star Wars character of them all. He's been around for 25,000 years. And he's like the Ollivander of the Jedi. He knows every lightsaber that a Padawan constructed. So that's kind of interesting. But also, it's like, okay, so there's a lot of stuff that they could tell. It's like when did she pick him up? Where did he go
Yeah.
during Order
How did those two connect?
66? What yeah, all these things. Um, so now let's go to a controversial one. Maybe, well, I guess the one that I think I know this is Dave's bugaboo, and I'm still uneasy about it, and that's Hera, the portrayal of Hera. Um, I don't know what it is about it that doesn't sit right yet, but I'll let Dave first go, and maybe he'll help me out figure out why I don't. It's it's like Sabine nailed it. Hera, it seems like it was a high outside. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think some of the specific choices for me in particular scenes in particular moments when she chose a particular delivery, it just I didn't like, um, and it didn't seem true to character. And again, like, is that a me problem because I'm bringing all this Rebels baggage into the equation, or is it a problem with the actress's performance? And I don't know the full answer to that. But again, like I would say what Aaron just said, which is like I'm a little apprehensive about it right now. I wasn't a fan of what I saw. Um, but again, she's playing it very differently than
Well, I just
you would maybe expect that character to behave.
to me, there's two things.
Uh-huh.
One, first of all, you helped me figure this one out finally. It seems like she doesn't have a care in the world. And
Yeah.
in Rebels, she had every care in the world. There was something that was always driving her, and she's just kind of like, "Oh, you two are just difficult, you know. You're good. You'll be good friends again. You know, everything's going to be fine. You know, that's just kind of the vibe I got, and that's not really the vibe that Hera. There's a little bit more edge to her in Rebels. Number two is that, and this is going to sound, she just looks younger than what she did in the cartoon.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit.
I mean,
Um,
and so that's kind of she looks like the youngest of all of them. And I don't mean that as a I don't know, it just something is just kind of I mean because the costume is there, the design I started wondering I was like, well, did they design the her head tails correctly? Yeah, they did that. So
to be completely fair, Ahsoka's voice bothered me considerably when I first saw her, when I saw Rosaria's version of her, because her voice is so much deeper um, than Ashley Eckstein's, and I couldn't get past that for a while, and now I'm okay with it. So it took some time, and so I'm willing to sort of take that mentality here, but at the same time, yeah, exactly. She's playing it very cool. I'm cool. Hey, we're all good here. Hey,
you know
everything's good.
where it finally
Like,
started to
Pilot.
feel like
here's the
Hera
pod.
was when there was two places. Well, one when they were interrogating the shipyard people. You know,
Mhm.
she started getting some of that. You know, kind of "don't mess with me" Hera vibe. So that was good. And the other was when Ahsoka said found the map for Thrawn, and she realized that okay, this could lead to Ezra, because here's a person you know that she lost the love of her life. She lost basically her son in Ezra. Has watched through the Galactic Civil War. You kind of would expect this general to be a little bit more jaded or not. I mean, it's like you kind of would have expected instead of saying, "Well, you two are just." I thought that you could being difficult is what made it work. Instead of, I think Hera would say, "You know what? You two need to just figure this out." I mean, at this, so it just doesn't jive with where she had come from. I don't know, Fredo.
First of all, what's interesting is I just had to look up because Mary Elizabeth Winstead's 38, so he's kind of keeping in about the right age for um, for Hera.
Is it
Part of
really?
me,
Whoa, 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 whoa! Hold on,
well, I
hold on, hold
mean,
on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Because we're 7 years. This is 7 years uh, after
uh,
Return of the Jedi. I mean, then in Rebels takes place, a good handful of years. How far are we out from Rebels on this one? Because otherwise,
well, yeah, well, yeah, because by the
15 to
same
20.
Yeah, and she was in the mid-20s when she was leading the Ghosts in Lothal.
Hmm.
According to Wikipedia, she was 24 by the time of Rebels. So
Okay.
I don't know,
She
but I
might be
guess
in her
to my
40s.
bigger point, to my bigger point, uh, I didn't mind it. I think sometimes, I mean, part of it, the dynamic is we know she's a mom, and not being a parent, I'll defer to the parent here about how kids keep you young and on your toes. So you almost have to have, a kind of a duck, water rolling of a duck's back kind of mindset about some things. And don't necessarily think that her becoming jaded or becoming a hard ass would have worked for her character. I mean, it would have been an easy
Well, I'm
choice to
saying she
make.
always was kind
I
of
don't
a
necessarily,
hard ass. I mean, a little bit of a hard ass. And it didn't seem to be there in this.
but because what was going on at the time. Remember, she's leading a rebel cell behind enemy lines to disrupt the Empire's plans. Now she's a general in the New Republic, and as far as the New Republic is thinking, everything's perfect. Of course there be, things are going great. The New Republic has finally triumphed. So maybe in some ways she's dropped some of that guard and some of that hard edge that she felt she needed to have during the Galactic Civil War.
Yeah, that's
But
fair.
to me, I didn't mind it. I know I kind of understood, kind of okay, maybe they're going with something different. Yeah, you're right. At some point, it'd be interesting to see if we do see that hard edge kind of come back to her character as the story progresses.
Oh,
But
there was
first
another
things out.
there was
Mm-hmm,
another time when it was totally Hera, and that was when she and Chopper were chasing after the escaping ship.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
Now we have more episodes to go.
Hopper.
I will say again, my litmus test: Brit really loved the character, got
Mm-hmm.
the character, thought it, you know, yeah, she just was, like I said, fine with it. Let's talk villains
Oh,
in
yeah.
these character portrayals, because we have two former Jedi in Balin Skull and Shin Hati. We have a Morgan Elsbeth is now confirmed to be a Night Sister, and we have some dude who looks. I guess Lucasfilm has already said he is a former Inquisitor, but that's Marek. Marek.
Mark.
Um, so those are our big baddies right now, and I dug them. I dug them all. Um,
You know what I like the most out of the gate? Well, first of all, their introduction was just classic, perfect Star Wars. They are competent. They are cognizant of what they're there to do. They know how they need to do it. But Balin is, they're not snarling, they're not menacing, they're not trying to, you know, their job is to accomplish, their mission is to accomplish the mission. They do it. That's it. They're not there to bandy words or to snarl like the robots that attack Sabine, sorry, uh, Ahsoka at the temple are more what you expect of a Star Wars villain. Whereas with Balin and Sati, sorry, they were just very much, nope, we're here to do this job. You're in our way. Lightsaber, goodbye. We're done.
and Balin is also, I mean, he's a mercenary, but it was
Mhm,
like the last line that he, and he said it would be a shame to kill Ahsoka because there's so few Jedi left. So automatically he's complicated. He's not, it's not an easy villain where it's like you did me wrong and now I'm going to get even with the universe. I mean,
mhm.
yeah,
Reminded me of Dooku in a lot of ways.
yeah,
You know, a guy that is very conflicted about his current path because he's going to hurt people that he values. Like again, like whether he has a personal relationship there. In this case, he's concerned about wiping out more Jedi, which to him is not something he'd like to see happen. And they appreciated that aspect to his character. Again, the competence, the quiet confidence, he just is very much aware of his own abilities and his place in the universe. and I'm really fascinated by him. And again, his apprentice, we haven't seen very much with her yet, but I love their dynamic. Um, and it remains to be seen if this is going to hold true. But she like respects that teacher apprentice relationship. Like there's not a whiff of rebellion
No,
in her yet.
and he's very calm, and she's a storm. I mean, when
Right.
she, yeah, there's a lot of fury there.
Makes
But she understands like
Hmm.
this is the pecking order, right? This is the guy, he's the boss. I'm gonna do what he says. Um, and I dig that because like we don't always see that.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if she was a Padawan, one of the younglings at the temple, or if it's somebody, because given I mean, they juxtaposed her with Sabine, particularly in that duel for the map in episode two. So it makes me wonder if maybe she's the same age. So was she at the Jedi Temple? Was she somebody that Balin found after and has been kind of teaching in the ways of the Force, but without any of the rail guards that would have come to young Padawans? It's interesting because she's very much, like you said, Dave, she's a storm contained.
Well,
Like at any moment, she might just go.
what's interesting is like we're kind of witnessing a like a reformation movement within Star Wars. It's because they aren't Sith, but it's kind of
Hmm.
like it's like when Martin Luther broke off from the Catholic Church. He didn't want to not be Catholic. He wanted things different. So I think you've got Balin, who is like, you know because he's still training her in a Jedi like way. You still have the braid, teaching you how to build the lightsaber the way that we were taught in the Jedi Temple, but we're not Jedi.
Well,
And
and
people are
like
wanting
I
to
said,
say, people are wanting to call gray Jedi's, but we're just going to throw that out. It's just, it's like, it's almost like a different sect.
well, and that's what's interesting because Balin's not Sith. Ahsoka's not really Jedi. I mean,
Well, and
by
she
her
says
words.
something the same way. She says to Huyang, said, he's like, how did she give up the location of the map? She said, well, I didn't follow Jedi protocol either. So, I mean, you know,
He is a reflection of her.
yeah.
And I
A
think like
mirror.
she felt like she was probably so evolved. Oh, I'm not a Jedi. Uh, that was one of her favorite things to say. And now here's another person who says, I am not a Jedi. And yet it's a much darker version of what she's trying to achieve or project. And so um, it's fascinating on that level. But I also feel like these two characters, these non Jedi, non Sith, I'm really curious to see how they're going to bounce off of these other antagonists.
Well, yeah, and and to that point, Morgan Elsbeth now is a Night Sister. Night Sisters, use the dark side of the Force in just a different way. So that's going to be interesting for people to get, kind of comfortable with, because before it was either Jedi or Sith, and now you have, a bunch of people who have some sort of connection with the Force. I like that
Yeah,
she's a Night Sister. I think that's going to be kind of cool. It'll be interesting to see what goes on. Um, and since we're there, what like one of my so well, first of all, before well, no, while we're there, then we'll speculate wildly about Merrick later, because I have an idea that something I heard, and then Dave has an idea. But let's talk about witches for a second. And I cannot claim this. I want to run this by you guys. I think this came from New Rock Stars. Um, so the the number 3 is very witchy number, and when we're in that temple, there are 3 figures. There's the tri-catcher, so everything's in 3. And so they posed, they said, but right now there's just one witch. So what if, because I found her reaction very interesting when Shin says, you're a witch. It was like there was a connection there or something. So maybe she has some connection to the Night Sisters. And then the third one, this might, you can throw me off the over the rails on this one if you want to. But Sabine, who Hu Yang says your abilities, are below about every other Padawan that I've ever seen in 25,000 years. But Sabine was possessed by a Night Sister. So is there some sort of residual, and maybe that's where this force connection that she has comes into play? What if the three witches end up being obviously Morgan, Shin, and Sabine? We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but it's just interesting to think about. I mean, because like I said, Sabine was possessed by a Night Sister for a whole episode.
I think it's important, like again, like at the risk of repeating ourselves, is that like what we're seeing here in this series, and I think like what makes this series valuable already 2 episodes in, is that we're not seeing people that are narrowly defined in a particular Jedi Sith way, right? And regardless of whether any of these people are going to become witches or
Tell Kate it's okay. She has
yeah,
9 fingers left.
yes, yeah, you still have your fingers. Yeah, Linus wanted a cookie, so be careful. I think. Um, as I was saying though, I just think like there's value in um showing us something new, showing us something
Well,
different.
I
And we're
like,
on that path right now where you're
yes,
seeing all these different characters that you cannot just put into a tidy little box and
yes,
say that's what they are.
and I think that what's frustrating is that's what Ryan Johnson was kind of trying to say, and that people like peed their pants over, and now Dave Filoni is saying it even louder that hey, here's all these people that have some sort of connection with the Force, but guess what? Ain't none of them a Jedi right now. Ain't none of them a Sith. Oh no,
Yeah.
Fredo, what do you think? My theory, the new Rockstar's theory, you think is full of muck or not?
Part of me was thinking, you also have, and I'm trying to remember without spoiling Jedi Survivor, you still have Marin out there potentially. So there might be another Night Sister here or there. Although it'd be surprising if she aligned with Morgan. Although I think to the element about Sabine having been possessed, it creates an interesting conflict, internal conflict within her about, maybe having more access to the Force or a better connection with the Force than she feels she has right now that she may need to do in order to be a strong enough, excuse me, Padawan to be able to help Ahsoka and find Ezra, which they've defined quite clearly. Her goal is to find Ezra. So whatever she's going to do to make that happen may put her in conflict with Ahsoka and Hera.
Yeah, I
Uh,
might tag off of that briefly too to just say that like she's not, if there are seeds of discord between the two, which we already know that there are, that becomes a wedge between them, which becomes a path for them to split off from one another, which makes this witch theory um, plausible. Anyway, Fredo, you were going to say something else.
yeah, no. So, but it's interesting because talking about it with some friends, they had an issue with the idea of witches in Star Wars, and I'm just like, it's just a different way of understanding and coming to terms with the mystery of the Force.
But
Which
well,
I
sorry,
suddenly,
sorry that you could be talking about real friggin' world right now. It's like it's
mhm.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
If you look at the Jedi as say like the Christian Church, the witches, the Night Sisters of Dathomir are like Eastern philosophy.
well, it's or
Monks on a mountain,
uh, uh,
or something else.
let's hit closer to home, Fredo. I mean, it's the
they're
Catholic
Wiccans.
Church looking at the voodoo
Pagan,
temple down the 4 blocks up, um,
right?
and it's like Yeah, I mean, okay. So if we were sitting at a
But
bar, if we were
but
sitting at
it's
a bar and we had a few pints, I would really get on a tirade here. Um,
mm,
but we're not going to for right now. So, but I do want to speculate wildly about Marek though, the Inquisitor
mm,
dude. Um, and mine is just again, I picked this up from some reading that I did. Um, but Sam Witwer
mm,
is credited in Ahsoka. Sam Witwer was the voice of Darth Maul. He's done a lot of things for Filoni and for Lucasfilm, but he was also the voice of Starkiller from
mm.
The Force Unleashed, who was Darth Vader's apprentice. What if that Inquisitor Marek, whatever his name is, what if that is Sam Witwer? And is will we get and maybe so that would be we have Star Killer, and then does that lead us to why this thing is called Star Killer Base in um, by the Force Awakens?
Seven, yeah.
I don't know.
That'll be. I mean, like I said, that's just kind of a. There's not. I mean, I'm like the guy with the post-it notes and the red
Yeah.
string,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, we'll have to watch that. I mean, that's kind of interesting when you see that name credited, and there are some. It wasn't a difficult connection to make, but
Mm-hmm.
but Dave, you have another idea of that character.
I do. Woo! Right under the buzzer. Um, I, Sam Witwer, and we have a Night Sister. I'm not sure that's a coincidence. It might be. It might not be.
Are you bringing Darth Maul back to life again?
I'm not talking about Darth Maul specifically. I'm talking about potentially a Night brother that isn't Maul. Maul's dead, we think. We're pretty sure. But a Night brother that isn't Maul. Perhaps a brother. Perhaps somebody of no familial relation, but just one of the species that resided on that planet and were subjugated by the Night Sisters and were particularly force sensitive and might become proficient with a lightsaber. I don't know. That was my immediate takeaway because I just saw Night Sister. I saw Sam Witwer. I thought, yeah, maybe.
What's interesting is that we didn't hear a voice out of him at all.
That's true.
And by the way, can we talk real quick just about the most badass move was when the double bladed lightsaber was flying back and Ahsoka just kind of moved her shoulder. So
Yeah, that was good.
that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Um,
The same, totally an Anakin move.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, like I said, I was over the moon with these first two episodes. Now I'm going to watch another one here in a couple minutes, and and we've got 6 episodes to upset us. But and what I find interesting, people talking about how weird it is that Star Wars has introduced another galaxy, and that's the least of my concerns in this. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like all that is, it's all, folks, it's all a MacGuffin. It's just we need, I don't know. And then they're trying to read into it. It's like because Morgan says usually people say space and time, but she said time and space. So is it like I don't know. But basically, I mean, everything's just set up for them. You got a race of the baddies versus the goodies to get to Thrawn first. Um, so I don't really think there's anything beyond.
I think briefly, I think there's something sort of valuable in that from a storytelling perspective, which is that there's this new galaxy. That means there are new threats.
Yeah.
Like the rebels won. They're on top of the galaxy. The emperor is dead for now. The emperor's gone. We've
For now,
won. Yeah, we've won. a different galaxy is a different story. There's no telling what you might find out there.
And can we just right quickly, because I love that they did this in episode 2. They went back when they were going to Corellia to figure out what the heck the plans of the Pack guys were, and they get this impresario who's they commission all these ships, and it's like, oh wait, all these guys were former Imperials, and they're still all very much for the Empire. I'm like, you know, whenever we got episode 7, we always go, how the heck did the Empire not fall apart? And the one of the good things that all these shows, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka are doing is they're bridging that gap. They're showing us how the foolishness of the New Republic to think, oh, we beat the top guys, therefore everything's hunky dory now. We're all one big happy galaxy, not realizing, wait a minute, there were thousands upon thousands of people who were quite happy with the Empire being in charge, and they're not necessarily just going to be quiet and go away now or and just side with you guys because you're the new power. And I I find that it's a tiny bit of cynicism in Star Wars, but I think it's mandatory because we know where it's going to lead. We know that we're going to get the First Order at some point down the line. So I love the fact that they're not saying, "Oh, the galaxy's perfect and everything's fine." If anything, the New Republic is quite blind to the reality on the ground around them, which is hilarious because they were the once upon a time the roles were reversed. They were the guys on the ground, you know, finding ways to upset the Empire's apple cart. You know,
My final thought: Chopper is awesome. So I yeah. So that was
just shoot
that's
it down. Just shoot it down.
yeah, right. You can tell exactly what he's saying. It's like yeah, it's yeah, and what he has like the highest body count, maybe next to Luke. So anyway, so okay, well, next week we'll talk about what we see tonight and tomorrow with whenever we watch this new episode of Ahsoka. Let us know what you think on whatever we're calling it now, X, or
Twitter X.
or just if you see us at a bar somewhere, talk to us there, or Facebook or smoke signals, whatever. But otherwise, until then, keep cool, and hope everybody has a fantastic week.
McClunky.